Well, welcome everybody to session 3 of our animation scripting class, week 2. And today we're going to be going over several things. Hopefully everybody's doing fine. How did last week go for you? So far, so good? Good. Struggling a little bit. Okay, well, no real new announcements at this point. We just want to make sure everybody knows that we're using Adobe Flash CC 2015. And if you have any troubles with that and don't have that installed, you can contact Jason Merrill, and that's his, well, it's actually at independence.edu. I fixed that on one slide, but then I think I didn't fix it in this one, so.
How are you? Good. I'm Kellen's mom. I just wanted to come meet you. I'm sorry.
And then here we have the agenda for this week. And today we're going to go over the overview and objectives for week 2. We're going to go over the readings and tools for this week. And then the week 2 discussion. This week is on UX and UI for mobile devices. And during the second hour, we'll go over the assignment and over the assessment. If we have any time, we can work on your any work you want to work on. Last week, I did a thing that I hadn't ever done before, and that is I recorded me watching the video and then pausing it, and then giving you a little bit of a commentary, and then unpausing it and letting it go, and then pausing it, and so on. And I got some positive feedback on that method and I just wanted to make sure if I'd like to do that again this week, just because it's helpful. I think it's one thing to give you a video to study, but then to watch, but then to add my own 2 cents worth, I think helps it sink in a little bit more. So I'm going to do that again this week. What I did last week is I added that to the. So did that work for you, Rhonda? That worked pretty well. What I'll do it this week too with each of our recordings. If you want to watch the recording by itself, you can, but I'm going to add that to our lecture just so that those who watch the lecture will be able to get my 2 cents worth. Okay, Jason has a question about lynda.com. Go ahead, Jason. What's your question?
Like it said.
Go ahead.
And I tried to sign up for that 30-day trial, and it only gave me the option of doing a 10-day trial. But when I put because the only card, it asked me for a credit card. But whenever I tried to put the card that I do got in, it's not actually a credit card. It's just my debit card from work, and it won't accept my card. So I wasn't able to watch any of the videos for like today's discussion or checkpoint. I wasn't able to watch that video. I had to guess at that. It's not letting me watch anything on lynda.com.
Okay. All right. Let's.
I don't have any other credit card or anything like that, or else I would have tried it. But
yeah. Okay. I've got to. What I think we can do is during this lecture, what we'll do is we'll go over that, and we can redo the daily checkpoint. what we'll do is we'll watch that link just so that you can do it for today, and then.
Well, the problem was is once you go into the quiz, it times you. So I mean, I did that quiz about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours ago. So it would have already timed out. So I just had to guess at it, and because I didn't know what the video was about.
Yeah, I understand. I think that I'm able to reset scores and let you retake an assessment, but I have to double check that. So what we'll do is during the break, I will go investigate that, and I will mention this to the associate dean, the challenge that we're having. I'm waiting to hear from the school about our login for lynda.com. I haven't been able to get that login. I understand that we're going to be able to have it, but so during the break, I'll just make sure that Caroline knows what we're dealing with here, and then we'll watch the video, and then I'll try to also during the break see if I can reset your score so that you can retake it. And that'd be anybody here. How's that sound? Is that a good solution for today?
Yeah, that'd be good. I'd like to watch the video.
Yeah. So during the break, I'll message Caroline and see if she has the information. Yeah, I have to check my email. There's a chance that it came today. So, okay. All right. So then we'll go over the discussion, UX and UI for mobile devices. During the second hour, we're going to go over the assignment and then overview of the assessment. So I think we're going to get that all done. We'll have to go quickly and get through this. Now, just back up for a second. Let's remind ourselves what the overall project is for this mod. And the reason we do this is just so to keep your mind on this overall goal. I'll just read that. By the end of this mod, you'll have conceptualized and created. That's week 1. A self-promotional infographic that is interactive and animated. You'll then deploy it so it can be viewed on the internet, mobile devices, and a standalone application. So that's what we're working on. Week 1, we did the storyboard. This week we're going to work on the assets, and next week we'll be working on the animation, and then week 4 just polishing it up. So this week we will dwell further into the UX. UX is an acronym standing for user experience, UX, user experience, and UI, which stands for user interface. So, and start putting together the infographic to be animated for the final project. So that's week 2. So the objectives to obtain that goal is to, number 1, define and understand the importance of creating a good user interface. We'll be talking about this. This will be our discussion for desktop and mobile devices. And then number 2, create and execute original artwork pertaining to a self-promotional piece. And so this would be artwork that you'll create, and that'll be your assignment. So that's what's going on for the objectives. So as far as what you'll be graded on this week, the discussion is on UX and UI for mobile devices at 60 points. Building the assets, that's 120 points. And this assessment, this is a typo right there. It's actually going to be worth 50 points. 100 points, week 2. And I'll just make sure that it's set that, but that's that's wrong. It's actually 100 points in week 2. It's normally a midterm, if you will. Then let's start looking at any questions so far? No? All right. So let's start looking at the readings and tools for this week. So this will look familiar. Might do a little bit of review here. Create and publishing an HTML5 Canvas document. This area of the Adobe website is actually the help file. It's like an online help document, and if you click here, you go to the more or less the home page of the help. So this is very informative here because it breaks down the help file. So it's an online help file of Flash into these large categories, and then the more popular links within that content area are here on the right. Now, ours is the one that we're working on is this creating and publishing an HTML5 Canvas document. So this here is underneath the Get Started section. If you can see, if you go to the home page of the Flash Professional Help, and then right here you can see this is the document that we're focusing on this week. So that is the. I want to make sure I got the link correct. Yeah, that seemed to work. And video. Oops. Right here. 3 minute and 39 second video. All right, so this is something there's the video that it's talking about. And so this is going to be part of what we'll be focused on in the test. Talks about the HTML5 Canvas, and just so you know what that is, this is one of the tags from HTML5. So what is HTML5? You can learn about the HTML5 Canvas by going to the W3 Schools here. This is an excellent resource. And this is a new tag that was created in HTML5. It's used to draw graphics on a web page. And so that is the name of the tag. And so if you were to look at the HTML itself, you would see a tag called Canvas. This is here, tells you exactly what version of the browsers support this particular tag. So if you have any of these browsers, a lower version, then it wouldn't support it. As you remember from my first conversation with you, that the developers of these browsers always have to keep up, and this is an exact example of that, how they have to constantly improve their software. Now, one of the things I wanted to mention is that if you don't know what version you're using, you usually can go up here and click on the name of the browser you're using, and it typically will say have the word about next to the browser name. And if you click on that, it will go to a page and it will tell you the version number. And that holds true for most software applications. It'll be the word about, and there's the version right there. And so if you come back here, so I'm version 47.0.2526.111. So here they have version 4 right there. And so this has been around since version 4. Now, if I have these other browsers, then we could look up what the browser version is and find out whether or not the browser we are using will support that Canvas tag. Now, keep in mind that not everybody on the internet upgrades their browsers. And sometimes with older computers, they just choose not to upgrade, and they can't upgrade. So you always have to keep that in mind when you produce your web page, and in this case, an infographic, because you have to realize that some people won't be able to view your website or your infographic in this case if they don't have the proper updated version of their browser. Now, as you can see, right in here, it's a canvas tag, the open canvas tag. Width and height tells you how wide and how high it would be. Some styling information here.
Mr. Brown?
Tag. Yeah.
We're not seeing anything. All we're seeing is the PowerPoint.
Oh, let me fix that. I think it has to do with what I've shared. Let's see.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just, you were talking about something and I wanted to see what you were doing.
No. I'm glad you did. Now, can you see, what do you see on my screen now?
I see the w3schools.com.
Okay, that's exactly. Yep, I just realized that I had shared just my PowerPoint. So thank you. I appreciate you interrupting me. And I was just going to mention to you that here on the W3 Schools website, this is where you can learn more about this HTML5 Canvas tag and the browser support right here. This is the version.
Mm-hmm.
And I showed you this. Click Chrome, about Google Chrome, and there's the version right there. This is the name of the tag. Luckily, you don't need to learn all this to type it in because Adobe Flash is going to output this for you. That's the beauty of HTML or of the Adobe Flash Canvas document. Its output will create the HTML5. Now, these are all advanced examples here of ways to draw on your canvas. Before, we had to use Adobe Flash to do the drawing, but now this is how it's done with HTML5 and JavaScript. But again, luckily, you don't need to worry about this because it's all going to be generated automatically. You'll just create the animation in Adobe Flash, and you will output it, you'll publish it, and it will automatically already have all the coding for you. Okay, so maybe when I was talking, I mentioned here, this is probably what you didn't see, because now I'm thinking about all the things I've shown you since I, see, we were on our slides here, and click on this link, and this is the document. If you click on this link, this is the link. You'll find it here in week 2, Readings and Tools. It is right here. Okay, so you click on this link, and this will be one of the things that you'll be tested on. Okay, and the video is down here at the bottom. So I was mentioning here that right up in here, what is the HTML5 Canvas? And that's when I jump to this W3 Schools link to learn more. And so it is a document type, and when you say a document type, that means at the very top of the HTML5 document, it just has HTML5 as defining what the document is, and that tells the browser that, in fact, I might be able to show it to you here. No, that tells the browser that it is receiving an HTML5 Canvas document, and so then the nice thing about Flash Professional is now that it can export HTML5 instead of just publishing just a Swift file. It's leveraging this Canvas API. Now, API stands for Application Programming Interface, and what that means is the ability to call it like this, where you are grabbing the document and the get element by ID, and it actually, see this ID right there is what it's going for. And so the JavaScript is taking advantage of this Canvas tag, which has, in this case, the ID of my Canvas. And so JavaScript is leveraging the Canvas API by how it is getting the document, the element by ID, and then doing things like this. Get context. That's an example of this API that we're talking about. And again, API stands for Application Programming Interface. And not only can you make function calls, but you can then extract that information, and that's what's being done here. You can set that information, and that's the properties that can be set. There's a function call right there. So again, the Application Programming Interface. And we can see more down here. So you can see all of these are examples of what they're saying right here, leveraging the Canvas API. So get context, stroke, there's a function, line 2, move to. All of these are function calls, and luckily you won't need to be programming these, but Adobe Flash will automatically make these function calls and for you, and that's all. This is all taking advantage of that API, the Canvas API. Basically, it's how the Canvas tag exposes itself to be programmed. That's what the API is. Exposes itself to be called function calls, or exposes itself to have attributes that are set. So that's what's going on with inside Adobe Flash, or the output. Here they explain to you how to create the HTML5 and make sure that when you click on the HTML5 Canvas option, because remember, this version of Adobe Flash allows you to create both the HTML5 Canvas as well as the Swift. You want to choose this one, this HTML5 Canvas option. The FLA file is a project file, and just by looking at it by the file name, you can't necessarily tell that it's been created for an HTML5 Canvas document, or if it's been created for a Swift file. You have to open up the file in Adobe Flash in order to have it identify, and it'll say Canvas in parentheses right after on the tab that's open. So here again, that's what this class is for, adding interactivity, and they're talking about how to do it with programming. And I think I mentioned this to you last week, the Create.js libraries. Those are open source, and so what Adobe did is they obtained these open source objects, which contained all the functions and attributes, and they've incorporated that right into Adobe Flash. So that's what it's saying here. It publishes HTML5 content using the Create.js libraries, or the Create JavaScript libraries. And when I say open source, I basically mean a lot of code that has been created and is just available for anyone to just copy and use. And so Adobe said, well, we'll use it because we need to get our Adobe Flash working with JavaScript quickly. And so that's what they did. So Create.js is a suite of modular libraries and tools. Now it says modular libraries, and that's why it says modular because there's an easel module, a tweening module or tween module, a sound module, and a preload module. That's what they are referring to there. And there they are right there, comprised of easel, tween, sound, preload, and I don't know this one. That's new for me. Not sure what that represents. So I haven't researched that. I don't know anything about that one. So, and then the Create.js converts content created on the stage. And that's what you do. You create the animation and it converts it using the objects and the calls from these modules to HTML5 and using these individual libraries to produce the HTML5 and JavaScript output files. Now keep in mind that normally the HTML document will be one document and one or more documents, and then the JavaScript will be one or more files. So the HTML typically will include the JavaScript files, but remember, HTML is different than JavaScript. So it says you can also manipulate this JavaScript file to enhance your content. Well, what they're saying is you can go ahead and edit those files after they've been generated. So that's all I wanted to explain, I think, about that. The rest here, code hinting is when the editor will tell you what you can be writing. Syntax highlighting, that's the coloring that they put in here, and then the code coloring and then the nice bracketing. It helps you keep track of these brackets and make sure you don't have too few or too many. That's what that is. Remember last week I mentioned about the this. In the this is actually in that video we watched last week. He was converting it from a Swift file, project file, to an HTML canvas, 5 canvas project file, and he had to add this in there. That is because JavaScript requires you to reference the document object model, or in other words, this. This is actually a keyword that represents that document object model, or DOM, that's built into a browser. Let me explain to you really quickly for what that means. Each web page that we go to is actually part, or it's incorporated into a DOM, or document object model. In fact, each tab here has its own DOM. And what I mean when I say DOM, or document object model, it's really the browser's attempt to, with a programmatic object, know what content to display. The HTML document itself actually is setting information in that DOM. And JavaScript has the cool capability of dynamically changing what the HTML has set, because you make it interactive. So because JavaScript has the cool capability of dynamically changing the settings in that DOM, that document object model, you have to refer to that document object model, and that's what this is. It's just a nickname for the one that's associated with this tab. And if we say this.stop, we're actually making a function call in JavaScript that is saying stop all animations, or in other words, all function calls to the objects that are doing animations, and those would be found in this object here, the tween object. So the JavaScript code is going to say stop, and then it's going to proceed and then make a reference to this movie clip _MC. Now this would be representative of an object. Remember how you can create objects in Adobe Flash? That's what this name. So they've made up this name. It refers to a particular object. In this case, it's a movie clip. And then this here is a function call to add event listener. Now this function call is associated with this object, which is part of the document object model. So the document object model is managing all these different objects on the screen. And that's what it has to keep track of. In this case here, this is saying add the event listener and look for a click. And if the click occurs, jump to this function. So this is all being done in JavaScript, and it's all dynamic. And this is called interaction right here. This is what it would look like to respond to a click. So if this movie clip has been clicked, then the document object model will say, I've got to jump to here, this function, which is actually defined down here. So this line 2 is setting up that what is called an event listener. It's all being done in the document object model. For this particular object, we're saying, okay, new movie clip underscore MC. If and when somebody clicks on you, you're going to grab control immediately and transfer control to this function called alert popup, and that's defined here. So you set up all these things. It's almost like wiring a bomb. Bad example. Wiring a booby trap. Bad example. Wiring something that will trigger. So you set up all the wiring. All your objects will have all these event listeners set to them. And it's not a good example. I gotta think of a different one. Maybe like a mouse trap. Lots of mouse traps. So each of these movie clips it runs this line number. Each of them would have their own event listener, and they'd have a unique name here. So the document object model has this all lined up. And it says, okay, in the event somebody clicks on this object, jump here. And it grabs control. So the browser, if let's say you're watching your infographic and all of a sudden you click on this movie clip, then it'll jump to this function. So it'll jump down here. First thing we're going to do, just for fun, is send up an alert, which is all it is just a display. So we're going to display the word clicked. That's it. That's all this does. Now it's just responding and saying, okay, it was clicked. We were clicked on. It's doing nothing other than displaying a little message. So this is just to help you understand how this all works. This is literally, this right here is how interactivity works. This is the guts of it right here. How interactivity works with your animation. So we don't have it doing anything other than mentioning a message here. And then after that, we have alert. This will run when the timeline hits this frame. So, so when the frame is hit, this gets all set up. But then it waits until somebody clicks. And when somebody clicks, the mousetrap sets off. And then we would have this message clicked. So that's how that all works. Any questions at this point? On a scale of 1 to 5, how are you guys doing? 5 means I'm following you really well. 1 means you lost me a while ago. Where are we at? How about you, Jason? Still watching videos, okay. All right. 3's not bad. So you can add interactivity to shapes or objects on stage using JavaScript. That's what's going on here. You can add JavaScript to individual frames and keyframes. Select the frame you want to add JavaScript to, select window actions to open the actions panel. We saw that in last week's example, how he changed the action script, which was commented out, to JavaScript. And he did it using these code snippets. And the API, again, that we're using is this Create.js suite. And these are the objects. Those are the 4 I'm familiar with. Zoe is not one I know about. Here's some code samples right here. Now keep in mind that Adobe Flash has code snippets. and already built in. And so here's, if you want to go above and beyond, you can go to do some of these too, these code samples. API documentation, again, advanced application programming interface. This is talking about the Create.js libraries, whereas up here, when we were talking about the API, we were talking about the Canvas API. So the Canvas API is really the Canvas object, which are these here, and that's its API. And the Create.js API is what's down here for interactivity. So this Canvas API allows you to draw lines and stroke text and circles and so on. This is for drawing. But when it comes in interactivity, then you have to jump into the Create.js components and modules. And that's why the Canvas API for drawing, whereas the interactivity is being brought into JavaScript, and that's what's defined down in here. JavaScript code snippets. So publishing animations to HTML5, that's the output when you have your FLA file. You publish it, and it'll output the HTML5 document. It'll also have a JavaScript associated with it for the animations. Assets, you can export those into various folders. They're not all part of the same file. Beforehand, Adobe Flash used to be just one file, the Swift file, Adobe Swift. And now, when you are dealing with HTML5, then the images are separate, sounds would be separate, Create.js libraries could be separate too, JavaScript files could be separate. And before, it used to be all combined into one Swift file, which is a binary file. There's only processable by the Flash Player engine. And so now we don't use that anymore, and we don't need a Flash Player engine. Now we're dependent upon the browser. The browser's taking over to do all this processing. And so these browsers are now able to open up the HTML5 document. They'll include the JavaScript that's linked to. There may be some CSS involved. And if there are any images, they'll be linked to by the HTML5 document, and they might be found in the images folder. And any JavaScript might be found in the lives directory, for example, in this case, or any sound would be in the sounds. So they're all broken apart now. They used to be one file. All of that was contained in the Swift file with Flash Player, but now they're all separated. Yeah, there is a way to the optimization of HTML5 Canvas, exporting bitmaps and Sprite Sheet. We talked about that last week, actually. You remember that? And we talked a little bit about this too, migrating existing content to HTML5 Canvas. Okay. So we've gone through that, and that's the same page. So it's right here. It's right in the getting started section. So let's move on. That's required reading. And now let's now look at some of these required videos. Creating shapes in the merge and object drawing modes. 7 minutes. This is one that I will watch, and then I'll add my commentary, and I'll add it to our recording. And we already know. Let's jump to here. Refresher on using the shape tool. Here, and the difference between merge and object drawing modes. If it's a merge, then it's kind of like there's not a distinction between objects, whereas an object, there's definitely a distinction. So the merge model has less information than the object model or drawing mode. Object drawing mode is making each of these objects its own instance of information, whereas the merge drawing mode, it's like we have one palette, and these don't have individual identities. These, on the other hand, can have their own identities. In fact, they can get their own names associated with them so that they are distinct instances of this object. This here doesn't have that. So the object drawing mode actually involves more information than the merge drawing mode. Here we're just drawing more or less lines and spheres and things, but they don't have that capability of becoming objects unless you were in the object drawing mode. And when objects, then they would retain their identity, even though they would be overlapped and so on. They retain their individual identity this way with an object drawing model. Okay, so go ahead and watch that, just to remind yourself of the distinction between those two. Here we were in Lynda, and this is what I have to get sorted out during the break. What they've done here is they've exposed certain videos for free. The ones that are grayed out are those that you have to be a subscriber to access. This helps you get an introduction to what's in this course. Publishing mobile and desktop applications. Let's see, publishing mobile and desktop. I think I missed this. Yep. Applications. Here you see the distinction between creating the output for a mobile device versus that for a desktop. Falls into this category. Associate Dean is pointing out the ones that we can view. Then here, draw and animate strokes with variable width. If you recall from last week, there's a new capability with this release of 2015 that allows you to scale your pen stroke with the zoom, or to disable that. Draw and animate strokes with variable width. Okay. And creating WebGL content. This page has two videos on it. This one here, that one. Here, if you recall, WebGL is actually an extension to what's provided by Create.js. Create.js goes so far, but doesn't do everything that we want to do with Adobe Flash, and hence bring on WebGL. Now, WebGL has a similar profile as Create.js, which is basically additional functionality that was incorporated into the Adobe Flash software program that was missing because it was available with regular HTML5, with Adobe Flash Swift files, but now because we're going away from that, Adobe Flash has to incorporate objects and functionality such as the Create.js, and then also the WebGL library, which is for 2D and 3D graphics. Now, this was provided by, it's a web graphics library. It also is a JavaScript API for rendering interactive 3D and 2D graphics. So this was also available to Adobe, and so they got a hold of that in the same way they got a hold of Create.js. It was open source, WebGL open source, and then now it's incorporated into Adobe Flash, and you can take advantage of those function calls. Those are different than the Create.js function calls to be able to do 2D and 3D computer graphics without the use of plugins. And what that means is you don't need something like the Adobe Flash player. And so these are really like extensions, if you will, to browsers. And when I say extensions, I'm kind of talking like these kinds of extensions that you take and you download additional software that's not currently built into the browser, and you extend the functionality of your browser. Same thing here. WebGL, it's now incorporated into the Adobe Flash, and when you output it, it will create output that won't require any additional plugins. So in other words, you don't have to install the Flash player, for example. You don't have to install a WebGL player because what it outputs will be all JavaScript. It'll reference some libraries of WebGL libraries, so it just makes calls into those. And so any compatible web browser will be able to run it because it's just JavaScript, and it's an extension. It's over and above what Create.js was. You can see WebGL actually came from Mozilla. So you might say, wait a minute, that's a different group. That's the group has created the group that creates Firefox, and that's true. If you think about it, Google Chrome creates their version, Microsoft creates their browser. This is Mozilla Firefox's browser, Mozilla Foundation's browser. It's called Firefox. So they created this, but they also created this WebGL. Now, this is Apple Safari, and this is Opera, I believe. I can't remember who created Opera, but the makers of the Mozilla Firefox also created this WebGL. Now, they made it open source, meaning open it to everybody, and so Adobe picked it up and incorporated it into their Flash Professional. They did that like they did with the Create.js. So that's why we have WebGL built into our Adobe Flash now. So it's the WebGL runtime API, just as Canvas has its own API for drawing, and so does Create.js have its own API for interactivity. So does WebGL have its own API for 2D and 3D. So there's a lot of APIs here that you get to use. And that's these last two. All right, it is time for our break. We'll take a 10-minute break at 7:57. And what I'll do is I think I'll pause the recording, or let's see. What I need to do is see if I can connect with, let's see. This will be first, our break. I didn't know how far we would get before our break. So let me see. Why don't I just move? I was off by one slide. Okay, let's take our break and let's see. I'll pause the share. And does anybody have any questions before the break? We're good? Okay, great. I'm going to see what I can do about the lynda.com issue. So I'll be here. Go ahead and you can unmute yourself if you'd like, or chat. That's fine. I'll be right back. Okay, I just wanted to make sure to let you know I've checked my email to see if there's any updates on the lynda.com um, uh, subscription. And so nothing in my email. So now I'm going to check on Skype, see if I can access our associate dean. Back in a minute. Okay, I'm communicating with the Associate Dean, and she's reminding me that she had mentioned this in our first class. And I've already connected with the lynda.com myself, and so what we'll do is we can just we can watch that, and we can work on the resetting it. All right. She's still typing here when we just. All right, I'm just signing off. All right, so let's, is everybody back? Good. Okay. So the discussion this week is share with your fellow classmates your concept of what your final project may entail. Explain how your layout for your mobile device achieves good UX and UI. Oops. And so first of all, part one, explain how your layout for your mobile device achieves good UX and UI. So let's jump to the discussion here. I think I want to go over it. So understanding the needs of our target audience is paramount. People no longer rely on their desktop computers or laptop to surf the web, to research and find information. The trend is creating content that is not only well laid out on a larger monitor, but to make it have a good user interface and a good user experience on mobile devices. As designers, our job isn't to just create stunning graphics for print and websites, but to incorporate our designs to achieve a good UX and UI on mobile devices. Now, I'm going to stop just for a second there because I want to make sure everybody understands this concept again. And I like to use my work website where we have a can you see the unique website right now? Are you able to see that? Yeah. Okay, good.
Now I can see the discussion and now I can see the unique.
Okay, good. Awesome. All right. So pretend like this is your infographic, and here, excuse me one second. And let's say the person is coming to the website and they happen to have a mobile device. And what are they going to see? Well, if they have a tablet, they'll see that. But tablet, they'll see this. But if they have a mobile device, depending on the resolution, they may see something different. So we've got this one working so that you'll still see the graphic here. So that's the mobile size. And as you can see, we dynamically changed our drop down here so that now we have a minimal set of options there. So that's the design we're talking about, the design concept of making it available for both, oops, that was the, both for the mobile or for the desktop. So for the first part of this discussion, research and write a minimum of 100 words with a minimum of 2 citations about best practices of creating content for mobile devices. that are not only creative, but employ good UX and UI. ProQuest and Shark are options there. Great places to start. Don't copy and paste more than 20%. So why don't you just, for our discussion, what are some of the things that you are seeing with our implementation of this? See how, just go ahead and turn on your microphones, everybody can. And what are some things that you're seeing with the design for mobile? What are you seeing going on?
I see half of the website and the top and the navigation. There's only 3 versus the 6.
Yep. We've collapsed the less important. We've made them accessible, but they've been collapsed. The most important ones are here. Very good. Anything else you see? The size of the image, the resolution.
And then
What-
the product information small.
And it's become a longer page vertically. What about certain information that some information may no longer be there that used to be there? See, there's tablet right there. And then we're going to jump up into, right up in there, that's desktop sizes. And so here's another thing. What used to be in 3 columns, 1, 2, 3 columns, horizontally have become 1, 2, 3 columns vertically. So there's one other observation. This was horizontal here, and it becomes vertical in the design. So horizontally laid out items become vertically laid out. This information here, we have our login, you'll see that. We lose the logo, I think. Yeah, we lost the logo right there, from there to there. So now we just have the name. So as you can see, there's certain information that's less important than others, and that's what gets lost. So there's a whole hierarchy of, see this Get the Look with our new products, that used to be separate. Now it's over the top. It's still dynamic. What used to be 6 across is now 3 rows of 2. See, that's kind of mushed up right there a little bit, a little close. Call to action still there. See, now it's vertical. It used to be horizontal. So here we have this is a portrait version of the website. What used to be a landscape version of a desktop website. So it's gone from landscape desktop to portrait mobile. And you can see some of the things that have been changed. Vertical links instead of the horizontal. So those are some of the observations that just you can see with our page in the question of what are some positive tips and tricks, best practices of creating content for mobile devices. So I can't really demonstrate what happens to the website. I'm going to grab I'm not exactly sure. We talked about portrait and landscape and mobile last week. What I'm going to do is I've got my mobile device here, and I'm going to go to our website. It's right now, you can't see it, but I'll tell you what's going to happen here. What happens. So we're going to go to the home page. I'm going to stay in portrait mode. And all right, so now I'm in portrait mode. And I'm going to turn it to landscape and see what happens here with my. Okay, it is the same. Let's see. It used to be 3 rows of 2 items. And when I go landscape, it's 2 rows of 3 items. But all the rest of the content is very similar. So that's the only thing that really changed in the design from portrait to landscape is the 3 sort of 2 rows of 3. It's now 3 rows of 2. Or no, instead of 3 rows of 2, it's now 2 rows of 3. And that's it. All the rest is the same. So that's not a big difference, and going from portrait to landscape. Possibly the observation I would make is that depending on the size of the information, it could, and so we had 2 rows of 3. I'm talking about these products right here. When it's in mobile portrait, we had 3 rows of 2. And then when it went to landscape, this is the only thing that was different. The sizing didn't seem to change at all. It just was 2 rows of 3. So that's a minimal change. Perhaps the observation we would make is that things that can be rearranged might be rearrangeable if you go into a portrait mode. But generally speaking, it could be pretty much the same design, whether you're on a mobile device and you go to between portrait and landscape. And we don't talk about that here in this discussion, but I think that would be something that could be set. So how would you, so that's the first part of the discussion. Best practices of creating content for mobile devices. Let's just see what best practices of creating content for mobile devices. So see if I can get in there. Let's see if I can get a ProQuest. See what comes up, just so that we can. Password. I have to jump home here really quick and go grab that from this page right here to see what you've got to work with. UX, UI. Okay, we've got some things to work with here. That's good. You can filter by scholarly journals and trade journals. You can filter on the time. Design mobile devices. UX, UI. Interactive. Oh, look at this. There's a nice one right there. Good reference. 7 steps to a killer mobile UI. By the way, remember I taught you this, or you might already know. Click Cite, and there's your citation right there. You just copy and paste that. That is okay to copy and paste. It's always good to read through the abstract, get a gist of what it's talking about. See, those are great ideas right there. Excellent ideas. All right, so there's one example you can go find in ProQuest. And that's the part 1 of our discussion this week. Part 2, on the other hand, is the second part of the discussion, and we're going to explain how your layout for your mobile device achieves good UX and UI. So take what you learn on the principles up here and then study your design. I think some of the students have already done this and responded to how their design represents some of those tips for a user interface. So that would be your part 2. Basically show or prove how your design reflects some of these principles. Very good. Don't forget to use 2 references, which is excellent. Nice job. Perfect. Remember to use citation like this. That's a citation right there. Very good. There's another one right there. That's called a citation. Good job, Vicky. Okay, good. Citation. Good. Good. Sorry, I'm doing a quick little review of everybody's work. Looks great. Excellent. Okay, this is looking good so far. We got a lot of that. Good job, Ronald. And that was Rhonda, and then also Vicky. So good job. Any questions? Sounds like many students already have good understanding of what's going on with this. So, all right. So back to our discussion. You good? Okay, let's move on. Now let's talk about the assignment. In fact, right here, this week you will set up your 2 documents for each respective resolutions, and we give you those resolutions, and begin to create your assets and import any existing assets you may be using. Click here. So building the assets, and then start working on your original art for your infographic. We do discourage from using clip art or free stock images. You can use any of those tools to create them. And remember, we're doing the HTML5. Now, the Associate Dean says you can set it up as HTML5 Canvas or AS3 for your desktop and mobile version to start. We do have a distinction here that's not, you can't do everything in HTML5 Canvas. At one point, I had learned that we would be using HTML5 Canvas exclusively. And so I'd recommend that you use HTML5 Canvas just because that's the way things are going. We're headed in that direction. So that's my recommendation. Arrange all the assets in the initial conversation that you determined in your storyboard for assets that are hidden off the stage will be viewable when the user interacts. You can be placed off the stage or have them in your library. So you don't need to worry about animation at this point. just focus on creating the assets itself. So, for example, what that would mean is, for example, let's look at this this interface design here. And so it would be assets such as images like this, images, buttons. Here you'd have like graphics, and then a frog would be part of that. Here would be like a rocket and a smiley face. Those would be some examples of what you can create this week. Don't worry about the animation, just the objects. So that's the assignment. All right, there's the rubric. And then next is the assessment. And I'll do like I did last week, where I went over the assessment and provided some teaching along that line. And I'm going to upload that and make that a part of this lecture. And so what I'm going to do is append those to the end of the lecture, a commentary on all the questions of the assessment. Okay. And next, what I want to do now is to watch that video that was part of the daily checkpoint, and see what I can do to help you reset your grade for today. So let's see right here. I want to make sure I am. I think that we'll be able to see it. We already did the assignment. We did the assessment. So I think that this is going to work.
In our bird watching project, let's apply some frames and keyframes to the movie to control the timeline and set up the home screen versus the detail pages about each individual painting. I'm going to pop open the finished version of birdwatching.swift so we can remind ourselves how this works and mentally get an idea of what we need to set up. We're going to set it up so that on frame 1, you see the picture of Paul Shellington and the textual biography, which of course we haven't added in yet. Then we'll add in different keyframes with the appropriate content detailing each painting. So for example, we'll have a separate keyframe that shows the information on the pink skies image. Then we'll have another keyframe that shows the content for Bird on a High Wire. Then we'll have another keyframe that shows the content for the waiting painting, and so on for the other 2 paintings. Now notice that when we go to the detail content for any of the paintings, the content fades in over the homepage content with Paul and the textual biography. So Paul and the text are actually going to always be on screen. They'll just be covered up by the painting detail content when it fades in. Let's start building it and it'll all come together. Working in birdwatching.fla, this piece is going to be a total of 59 frames long.
Okay, I'm pausing just for a second and notice that this is a Swift file, and so it's not HTML5. It is going to be, it's an FLA file, but you can see right up here it doesn't say Canvas. So we already know this is ActionScript based animation. Now the quiz is asking this question. When this animation was interacted with by clicking on one of the icons, it fades in over the home screen. How is this accomplished? So, it's not worrying about the fact that this is a Swift file. Okay.
So we'll start by making sure that in the timeline, the BG folder is expanded. Now I'll extend all the layers at once by selecting frame 59 on the top layer, holding down the Shift key, and then selecting frame 59 on the bottom layer. Now I'll just hit F5 to insert some frames. So the Samoka logo and the picture of Paul appear just as soon as the piece opens on frame 1. Those layers are fine. Now we'll start adding in the images for the detail pages for each painting. Since this content will fade in over the homepage content, I'm going to create a new layer above all the other layers and call it Content. I'm going to have the first painting detail appear at frame 10. So I'll right-click on frame 10 on the content layer and insert a blank keyframe. Since the detail content is going to cover up the homepage content, for now I'll turn off the visibility of the guide layer so we don't get confused. I'll also turn off the visibility of the home content layer so it's just out of the way. The Samoka layer with the logo will leave as is, since the logo appears regardless of what else you're looking at on screen. And we imported the images of the paintings earlier in the course, so making sure that frame 10 on the content layer is still selected, I'll open my library and open up the paintings folder. From there, I'll drag and drop pinkskies.jpg to the stage. With the image selected, I'll go to the property inspector and type in an X of 27.5 and a Y of 163. This image is ready to go. For the second painting detail, we'll have that show up on frame 20. So I'll select frame 20, right-click, and choose Insert Keyframe. Notice that we get the new keyframe, but we still have the pink skies image. Remember that inserting a keyframe, not a blank keyframe, but a keyframe, creates a new keyframe with the content from the closest previous keyframe copied into it. That's okay, because now we're going to use a trick. With pink skies selected, in the property inspector, I'm going to click the swap button. Flash opens up a dialog box that shows me all the items in the library that I could swap this image out with. The one I want to choose is birdonahighwire.jpg that's in the paintings folder. When I click OK, the image is swapped out and retains the correct X and Y position. If I had chosen insert blank keyframe instead of just insert keyframe, I would have gotten a new blank keyframe all right, but I would have had to drag, drop, and type in the X and Y for the image again. This way was a little bit faster. So we'll rinse and repeat for the next image. I'm going to right-click on frame 30 on the content layer and choose Insert Keyframe. Now, making sure the image is selected, I'll click the Swap button in the Property Inspector and swap this image out with Waiting.jpg. Same thing for the next image. I'll right-click on frame 40 and insert the keyframe. Now I'll swap the image with Warning.jpg. Finally, I'll right-click on frame 50, insert the keyframe, and swap the image with the Peacock.jpg. So that's all we have to do for now. I'm going to lock the content layer, turn on the visibility of the home content layer, and now scrub my playhead. It's very clear to see the homepage content and then the detail content for each image appear over Paul as we go on down the timeline. Now, don't worry that you can still see a little bit of Paul as we go down the timeline. We still have explanatory text for each image, as well as a background to go behind the image and text to add in later. That will cover up the picture of Paul. Also, if I test the movie, don't worry that the playhead just runs on down the timeline and zips through all the images without any control. We'll fix that later on. Also, just because we happen to have 10 frames between each keyframe doesn't mean it has to be that way. You could have 20 frames in between them, or 30 frames, or even the keyframes right next to each other. It doesn't matter because we can control where the playhead goes and stops with ActionScript. But with a little bit of visual space between each keyframe, I think it helps to separate in your head the different pieces of content that appear at different times. For now, we've used frames and keyframes to set up the structure for controlling what content appears in our project when.
Okay, when this animation was interacted with by clicking on one of the icons, it fades in over the home screen. How was this accomplished? And as you know, the home screen was the one with Paul in it. So, let me see. I'm going to pause just for a second and see if I can reset your. I don't think you were able to. Were you able to watch that video this morning, Rhonda? Let's see if I can reset. Give me 1 minute. Hmm. 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 Yeah, I don't see how I can reset a grade. I see how I can overwrite a grade. Well, why don't you tell me if what? Uh, yeah, 10 days. If you'd like, you can tell me your answer and just send it to me privately. And anyone else who watches this recording who wants to redo their answer for today, just send it to me, and I'll update it manually in the grade book. I think that's the only way I can do this, so it's fair to everybody to watch to it who didn't have access to the recording. So option 1, by fading back the home screen on the top layer and letting the layer below show through. 2, by leaving the home screen visible on a higher layer. And 3, by leaving the home screen visible on the bottom layer. So this here.
There are 2 drawing modes available to you
Oops,
when using the
that's
drawing
not the
tools
one I
in
want.
Flash. Merge drawing mode. In our bird watching project, let's apply
Here,
some
let's
frames and
advance
keyframes to
this.
the movie Things folder. From there, I'll drag and drop pinkskies.jpg to the stage. With the image selected, I'll go to the Property Inspector and type in an X of 27.5 and a Y of 163. This
Go
image
back here.
will have a separate keyframe that shows the information on the Pink Skies image. Then we'll have another keyframe that shows the content for Bird on a High Wire. Then we'll have another keyframe that shows the content for the Waiting painting, and so on for the other 2 paintings. Now notice that when we go to the detail content for any of the paintings, the content fades in over the homepage content
Right
with
there.
Paul and the textual biography. So Paul and the text are actually going to always be on screen. They'll just be covered up by the painting detail content when it fades in.
Right there. Okay. All right. Okay, so that's what we'll do for this. And I'll talk to Caroline to see if I'm thinking I might have to record the other video and publish that like as an announcement, just because other people may not have credit cards or something like that. But hopefully we can get our credentials. All right. All right, well, for tonight, I'm done for tonight. I'll be adding some more content at the end of this video as I go over the readings and tutorials like I did last time. And if you don't have any more questions, then we can call it a night. Thank you very much for coming. Have a good evening.